The reason they like reading my stuff is that I've always got real life examples to prove what I'm saying.
There's a lot of good people that listen to this podcast.
Other than God and my family, deer hunting would be next in line on my list of priorities.
From the bottom of our hearts, it's just fantastic and awesome to have the support that you guys are getting.
People ask me about expandable broadheads and love swings.
Chasing Giants with Don Higgins and Terry Peer. Brought to you by Osseo Camo, nature's most lethal camouflage. Follow along as Don and Terry discuss the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails.
Welcome, everyone, to the Chasing Giants podcast with Don Higgins and Terry Peer. August 14th, and this is episode 130. Don, how's it going, buddy?
Good. How you, Terry?
Good. We haven't talked a whole lot this week, but both of us have been really busy with a lot of projects, and we got a full episode to talk about today. We got a buck profile that's we're going to end the show with. As always, we got some good questions from listeners. We got a buy a farm segment that's a little bit longer this week because we haven't had them on in a couple weeks. They wanted to do 2 feature properties that I think are fantastic that are up on auction, so I wanted to go ahead and get both of them on this week. So we got a busy show today, so let's just jump right to it. What have you been up to as far as the hunting properties?
Well, I'll tell you, Terry, I've been had 3 different meetings with for Real World this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Met with 3 different groups on various things. One thing that I'll throw out right out of the gate, I teased something on social media earlier this week about scent control. And that I'm not a big fan of a lot of these products just because I've used them in the past and they didn't work. But I bought something this week that I'm going to try. I've never used it before. I want to stress right from the get-go that this is not an endorsement in any way. I have not talked to anyone at this company. I paid full retail price. I just got on their website and ordered it, but I ordered me one of those new Ozonics units. And 2 reasons. One, I'm going to be hunting some places this year where it's going to be really tricky for me to play the wind. And, if the wind holds to the right direction when I get in my stand, I'll be fine. But if it varies much at all, I'm going to be really pushing it. And so I thought I would try the Ozonics. And the reason for it was that I get a lot of questions about it. And almost every place that I go for a seminar, somebody asks about Ozonics. And I honestly tell them, I've never used it. But the thing of it is I've never, ever heard a bad word about it. I've heard negative feedback on just about everything else, from the scent control clothing to the sprays to whatever. There's people that, vouch for it, and there's people that say it don't work. But Ozonics, I've yet to hear a negative comment. And like I said, this is not an endorsement in any way, but I'm going to give it a fair test. And I might not have an opinion for a couple seasons, but just want to be clear that this is not an endorsement for Ozonics. I've not talked to a single person associated with Ozonics, but I'm going to give it a fair test.
I can't wait for all the comments of everyone who's got an opinion on this to give it to us. But just to clarify, are you using, did you get the unit that hangs in the tree with you, or the unit that you use to scent control your clothing, like the duffel bag or the locker?
No, this is the one that hangs in the tree.
Okay.
They've been advertising it quite a bit here lately. It's the, 500 series, the latest and greatest. So give it a shot. We'll see what happens.
Would have never guessed that would have been the one thing that you bought to prepare for hunting season this year. And, the crazy thing is, if either one of us would have called that company, they probably would have shipped multiples to us. But again, that's not how we work. We could go looking for free product all the time, but
if it don't work, I'm gonna
buy it.
I'm gonna send it to you for a Christmas present.
Oh, me? How about Wes? That sounds like a better job for Wes.
Yeah. Well, hey, I'm gonna give it a fair shot, so we'll see what happens. And I don't have an opinion either way. I'm open-minded, and we'll see what happens.
Well, I think going back to this conversation that we've talked about so many times, I think everybody always draws too much of a hard line when you say gimmicks about scent control, and it's not that we don't think some things help. Some things do help, but nothing's going to give you an edge to where you can go to the wrong spot at the wrong time and won't get busted by a deer. And I mean, it's fine if you wash your clothing and take care of it and don't wear it into Waffle House and all that kind of stuff. We do that. But it's just some people buy these gizmos and gadgets and liquids and think that they can go hunt on the upwind side of a bedding area and expect the deer not to know you're there.
Well, and the thing that everybody misses about playing the wind is you're giving the buck the wind. You could be 100% scent free, and if you're still not playing the wind, you're not going to be near as successful as you would be if you did play the wind. And
Right.
and the step that everybody misses in that playing the wind strategy is giving the buck a wind that makes him comfortable and allows him to move in daylight and feel safe doing so. And
Right.
scent control is only one part of it.
Right. It's clearly understanding it, but I know the specific reason that you're talking about needing to take a little bit extra precaution for this, and it makes sense. If this was just you hunting on your home farm or a property that was managed with a lot of habitat and stuff that we talk about on this property, you would have never made the investment. But we don't hold a lot of the keys to how this property is, do we?
No, and in fact, there'll be a lot of stands I hunt that I don't even take it along with me. Stands that I'm really confident in how to play the wind there, and they're laid out in such a way that it's pretty easy to play the wind. But I'm going to be hunting some new property this year that's going to be a little trickier. My farm in Ohio, Southern Ohio, is one of them. That's a heavily wooded area with a lot of hills, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult to control my human scent there. So, I don't know if this ozonics is going to work or not, but it was worth a shot, so I'm going to give it a
Yep.
try.
No, it makes perfect sense to me. While you mentioned Ohio, what's the status of there? Have you been out to the Ohio property? Have they done? I know they think they were doing some excavating and stuff, and that got a little delayed. What's the status on it?
Yeah, actually, I just talked to my partner there on Friday, and he has the heavy equipment, does all the plot clearing and putting roads in, whatever we need done, and they're just starting to get started because it's just been so wet all summer long that when the opportunity was there for him to get in, he had his equipment tied up on other jobs, but he just moved the equipment in, and he's hoping with about a week's worth of good weather he can be done. And when that happens, I'll be headed to Ohio to put some cameras out, put some feeders up, and see what's on the farm.
Yep. What about in Illinois? Did you get any food plot work done this week?
I just got some plots sprayed. That's about it. Don't want to rush that fall planting. That seems to be, one of the biggest issues that we run into, or I see with customers, is everybody wants to plant their fall plots early, and to be honest, I would rather be just a little bit late than a little bit early, because those plants, if you're too early, they get too mature and lose a lot of their palatability. And everybody's trying to shoot for a plot that's at its maximum peak on opening day of season. Well, I think you need to really rethink that strategy and consider on having that plot peaking, later in October, towards the end of the month instead of early. So, yeah, I'm a couple weeks, maybe, yeah, 2.5 weeks away from planting those fall plots.
Yeah. We got a lot of work done on my place this week. Posted quite a bit of pictures. My plots look phenomenal. Some of the best food plots I've ever had. More acreage, more diversity. If I run out of food this year, I have every deer in the county on my place, which we'll see if that happens or not. I'm not against it by any means, but I expanded my food plots by about 10 times. So we have a ton of food on the property. My corn looks fantastic. My beans look fantastic. But I actually put plots in knowing that I would terminate some of the corn. I got a weird idea. I've seen deer use the edge of corn and miscanthus so much that I did go in and basically make a runway out of a bedding area in the corn that it will be planted in deadly dozen here probably in about a week and a half, 2 weeks also. So, yeah, I'm right there with you. So
I saw your pictures of the NutriCrave corn ears, and they look to be at least twice as tall as that can of Pepsi that you had beside them.
yeah,
That's pretty good ear of corn.
that we when we came out with NutriCrave, we said that the yield wouldn't be quite as big as what normal ag corn, but I'm telling you, the crop that I have two other varieties of corn on my property, and I have a standard Roundup Ready corn that the NutriCrave is bigger than, and then another test corn that we have. And I'm telling you what, the NutriCrave, the stalk, I really can't understand why more people aren't growing this for either silage or feed corn. We're going to do some more analysis of it. Dwayne Hopkins is really he got after me and wanted some samples so he can calculate yield to get some true data around it. So we're going to be doing that, and we'll have more information on it. But yeah, the NutriCrave looks fantastic.
I actually, a gentleman that goes to church with me, planted some that they are cutting for silage this year. They feed out a bunch of beef cattle, and they planted half NutriCrave and half whatever they typically plant for silage corn. He's going to get me samples of each so that we can compare them. Grown in the same field, same conditions. But you're right, the nutrient content is so much better that if you're going to feed this to livestock or whatever, I mean, you got a real advantage there over traditional corn.
And I'm telling you what, I'll admit, even I was intimidated with not having a Roundup Ready product. And it's just we talked about it this spring a lot. Using a good residual, it's a little bit for someone who's not into actual being a farmer, and they're kind of I guess rookies at the whole food plotting. All these chemicals can be very intimidating and very expensive, but I've kept the weeds minimal. There is weeds in the plot, but using that residual and then cultivating it once, I mean, I had a bumper crop, and yeah, it hasn't been that difficult. The key is having the corn planter. I mean, at the end of the day, I think being able to work ground, apply the right fertilizer that you need based on a soil test, and having a corn planter is what's going to make or break you outside of Mother Nature.
Yeah, and to your point on the chemicals, 2,4-D can be sprayed on any corn. It doesn't have to be a traded corn. 2,4-D will not harm any grass. You could spray it on your yard and it's not going to kill the grass, but it's very deadly on broadleafs. So if your corn is, taken over by water, hemp, mare's tail, whatever, that 2,4-D will toast it. So you can keep it clean. Now it's not gonna clean up your grasses. If you get foxtail or something like that, it's not gonna help you there, but it'll sure take care of the broadleaves.
Yeah, and there's even other chemicals that you can use. I've had a bunch of people send us stuff. I'm going to continue testing, but again, it's a matter of pushing the envelope, growing, learning. You and I are still learning every day. That's why we tested so many chemicals this year, and we'll have that information as an educational piece later in the year, and probably have some more content in our land management guide that we come out with next year. But I pulled trail camera cards on my home farm. And of course, we were in Florida last weekend. So it'd been, I think, 3 weeks. And I had almost 86,000 pictures. It was insane. It took me hours to go through them.
Any good ones? Or you're not gonna?
Yes.
Okay. No details to share, but
yeah. have a good deer on the home farm, and then but the better of the bucks that I have available to hunt is not on my property, and it's I tell people listen to this podcast and say they can't do what we're doing, and I agree with them when it comes to killing a 220-inch deer, because those deer aren't everywhere. But when we're talking about killing mature bucks, 5 years or older, everybody can do what we're doing, and this is absolute proof of it. This is literally a 20-acre piece of property that gets hunted all the way around it, and I'm pretty sure that I can kill this deer. So we'll see.
I hope you get it done.
So, but don't listen to us and say, "Oh, well, I don't have all this property, or I'm not hunting in Illinois." When it comes to age structure, you can do what we're doing no matter where you're at.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. It's just a matter of the effort. If you've got the passion in your heart, you'll find a way.
You got to
It's
tee up
very
that word
possible.
discipline. You got to tee up that word
Well,
discipline right now.
discipline too. But it takes passion and discipline together.
Nope.
Anybody can do it.
So, but yeah, I'm going to go ahead and spray those areas, and then again we'll be playing, because my opener is in 2 weeks. So I have my new Matthews bow set up and shooting real well. But I had our mutual friend Brandon Epperson order me some new arrows that I'm going to shoot. I don't know that I'm going to change, but I want to see how they shoot. Just looking for a little bit stiffer shaft, but we'll see. So that's the only thing outside of the food plots I'm ready and dialed in as far as equipment. So I'm going to be hunting here in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I got a little bit longer than that for me with the October 1st opener. There's a chance that I could be in Ohio for their opener, but I think that's the last Saturday in September. So that might give me a few days jump on the Illinois season, but I don't even know what's on that farm, to be honest. Don't have a camera there yet. Was waiting on them to get these plots in, but hopefully in the next couple of weeks I'll get those cameras out and see what I got over there.
Well, but there really wasn't any reason to put cameras on there before they brought that equipment in. That would have been counterproductive, and you might end up having a reconics hit by a dozer.
Well, I would have much rather those plots be cleared back in June instead of August, but it is what it is. We'll just make the most of it, and hopefully they get them done, soon enough that we can get a fall plot in there anyway.
Right. Mother Nature always holds the key to everything we do. There's no doubt about that.
Yep.
Well, I got an idea. Instead of playing the Osseo commercial, let's just talk for a little bit about our friends at Osseo and Joe Miles. He's been working hard at putting a lot of good content out on his social media, but they have some new product out. I saw him advertise today that they actually have some black vests and I think a hoodie out that you could wear in a blind, or if you just wanted to wear it out and about. But you actually posted this week that we have a coupon to share with the Chasing Giants family that will save a little bit of money. So those people who are interested in Osseo gear, not only do we endorse it, but we can also help you save a little bit of money by using a coupon. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the coupon code is Higgins 2022. That'll get you 15% off of anything you buy at Osseo. And like you mentioned, Terry, we used it last season. And, before that, I was using various camos, including some really high end stuff. I mean, really expensive stuff. And there's some things I like about the Osseo that are definitely better than that high end camo. And a couple of those, one, they've got much better zippers in them. Another thing that I like better is the cuff design. Seems to keep the cold air from going up your sleeves a whole lot better with that design that Joe came up with. And then the camo pattern itself. I'm not a big fan of that digital type camo, and this Osseo, was modeled after an owl of all things. But think about it, that owl sits in the tree and waits for his prey. What a better camo pattern to try to mimic than the owl. So Joe's done a fantastic job with that line of clothing and also other gear, the backpack and such, and the fact that he's given all our listeners a 15% discount. And not only that, but this is not sold through dealers. You can't go to the store and buy Osseo. He's selling it direct, which saves you about 40%. So on top of that 40% savings, he's giving you another 15 as a listener of this podcast. So Higgins 2022, just go to the Osseo website and order your camo and put that in, save you another 15%.
Yeah, the thing, there's so many little nooks and crannies, and we've had Joe on to talk about the garments themselves, but I can tell you it doesn't matter which piece I use, and I use the really lightweight stuff here in September all the way through the heavy gear in late season. The thing I love about it is, I'm not a small guy, and every other piece of camo that I ever have, when you sit down in a tree stand, even with bibs, your jacket will ride up in the back. This thing has a tail on it, so that when you're setting, especially in late season, basically you're almost setting on your jacket. That's how far the tail goes down, and really keeps you warm and airtight. Just there's so many little nooks and crannies of these garments that I encourage you to go to their website, learn more about it, and save you a little bit of money. But thank you to Joe Miles and his team for extending a coupon code as we prepare for the season. Higgins 2022. Visit Osseo Gear and cash that in. You won't regret it. Again, it's sold consumer direct, so I know people are going to feel a little uneasy about not trying it on. Free return policy and exchanges if it doesn't fit. So that's out of the question. All right.
No risk at all.
Yep. All right. Well, with that, let's move on to our first listener submitted question of the week. I'm going to share my screen for you to read off.
Okay, the first one comes from Scott Barkman from Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. He says, Don, it was good seeing you the other week for the seminar at Lost Creek Ag in PA. I have a question about hunting apps. Do you use any? There's a popular one that supposedly forecasts deer movement. The family that created it has my respect and has shot some real slammers. You often speak of taking advice from credible TV personalities, but I can't bring myself to use this hunting app. For one, I don't think I need it, and two, it feels like a lot like a weather forecaster never being held accountable when they are wrong. Am I missing out by not using this app? Thanks for everything. Good luck this season. Well, Scott, to be honest, the only app that I really use for hunting is OnX. Yeah, the OnX app is fantastic for a lot of reasons. It first of all, one of the best things it does is it shows you property lines and gives you property ownership. So you can click on any property. It'll tell you who owns it, what their tax address is, the number of acres, and things like that. The other thing is good for mapping. You can draw in your food plot. It'll tell you how many acres. It's got an application where you can turn it on. It'll tell you how many miles you walked, and it'll track the exact route you walked through through the woods or wherever you happen to be going. That's really, I've got 2 or 3 different apps on my phone, but I never turn them on, so I don't even know why I got them. I'll just delete the things. As far as the one that you're mentioning about the forecast, I just think I think you're right. You're 100% right in your appraisal of that. There is absolutely no way you can be looking into the future and predicting deer movement. So much of it hinges on the current weather patterns, and there's just no way you can know. The weatherman can't get it right a week in advance. Is somebody else going to get it that far in advance? So, the thing of it is, there's a lot of money to be made on these apps. You think about it, and somebody sells an app for $20 and they get 500,000 people to subscribe to that app, and they've got to pay annually. Well, just do the math, and there's a reason these apps are being pushed so hard, and it's because of the money that they generate. And yeah, there's some upfront cost in development and such, but man, the profit margins are absolutely huge. I'll just stick with OnX for now, and until I see something better, it's going to be OnX for me.
I've never used it. There is some other apps out there that would have like a picture of one deer or 5 deers on the day and say which day was going to be good. I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing they're just pulling that information like the moon guide on what the moon phase will be or something like that. I'm not sure. The one that he's talking about, I'm not sure how they do the predictive stuff. I think that there is some value with some of the technology that's out there as it relates to analytics, but not prediction, if that makes sense. So I think that there's stuff that we can learn. Like say if you there's a software called Hunt Control out there that if you're running 10 cameras and you strategically put those cameras in places on properties and it'll run reports to say you had this much movement or activity based on this wind direction or temperature in the past, I think that gives you some data that helps you learn about that spot. But to say on next Tuesday it's going to be the same way, I don't buy the cool or drink the Kool-Aid that far. But I think that the people that nerd out on it's no different than me keeping an Excel spreadsheet of when a buck walks by and it was this wind direction. It's just doing the work for me and not having to keep all that data. So I do like that. I do like some of the analytic information, but I don't think that you can necessarily predict, especially what we're doing, which is one specific buck. People kind of confuse that too. These predictive services are looking at all deer all the time, right? All animals. It's like the fishing forecast that says the fish are gonna bite. Bottom line is on the backside of a front temperature drop, we know we're in the woods. Why do I need an app to tell me that?
Right. I probably should correct myself. There is one other app that I use a lot, and that is Reconyx app for my cell cameras. I don't use it for anything else except, to view my cell pictures coming in on that app. But those are be the only two that I use.
So again, I think that the technology out there, Peter, or not Peter, what was the question?
Scott.
What was it? Scott. Peter's the next question coming up. I apologize, but I think that there is a lot of technology out there that kind of automates the Excel spreadsheets that we used to have to do. That if you're really into data and you nerding out on it, I think you can learn stuff from it. But to say that the target buck that I'm going to shoot is going to make an appearance on a specific day, I think that's a little bit of a stretch.
I agree.
All right, let's move on to question number 2.
Okay, this question comes from Peter Korzanowski from Somerset, Wisconsin. He says, Don, thanks for being willing to give your listeners such good information on hunting and habitat. You did some consulting on my Missouri property, and I'm working hard to accomplish the things you suggested out for me in the plan. I have 2 questions. The first one is about switchgrass. I prepped areas on my farm properly all last summer to be ready to plant. This year it all failed, and I was disappointed. After last week's episode, I realized you don't want to plant in the fall, which is what I did. My thinking was the seed wouldn't germinate until spring because it needed to freeze and thaw several times to start growing. Can you explain why the switchgrass germinates in the fall without freezing and thawing? My second question is about old cattle pasture. I recently bought a farm in northeast Kansas, and about half of it is pasture and hay ground. This area is probably like your home farm in that it is surrounded by miles of open ag land. My farm has the most cover for several miles. I've heard you talk about grown up pasture ground several times and was wondering if you think that would be the best cover. I was thinking of killing off some of the grass and then disking it. This would allow the seed bank to start growing. There are already several patches of thickets where the cows did not eat. Or would you kill it off and plant it in switchgrass? Any advice would be appreciated. Pete. Well, Pete, first about the switchgrass. Switchgrass is kind of unique of all the species of plants that wildlife land manager is going to plant. And a fall planting will work, but it has to be done very, very late in the fall. And for most of the country, that's going to mean November or later. You need to get the soil temperatures down so it does not germinate. And like you suggested, you're just putting that seed down for the spring. And if you get a really warm fall, even that might be too early. So, what happens is that switchgrass is really slow to establish, and it wants to put down a lot of root before it puts on top growth. And by the time you get a 1-inch hair sticking out of the ground from that seed has already put down 6-8 inches or more of root. It really wants to start by putting that root down. Well, and you're talking, probably 45 days before you're going to see much top growth at all. And what'll happen is, by that time that 45 days is up, you're starting to get, towards where you're going to have frost and conditions that are going to kill that young plant. It just does not have enough time to establish with a fall planting. So it needs to be a spring planting only, although a very, very late fall planting where you're just putting the seed down and that seed is not going to germinate until spring is fine. Now, you talked about the stratification process of the freezing and thawing. So if you would look on a switchgrass seed tag, it's going to have a germination rate, and then it's going to have a hard seed percentage. And you may have a germination rate of, say, 80%, and then it says 15% hard seed. Well, that hard seed is seed that will germinate. You actually got 95% germination by adding those two figures together. But that hard seed is the seed that needs the stratification to actually grow. So you go ahead and you plant the seed, and that 80% is going to grow without any freezing, thawing, any sort of stratification. It's that additional 15% that needs the stratification. So I know there's a lot of misunderstanding about that. People think that you have to go through that stratification process, and you don't. You're going to get some germination and probably a fairly good germination without any freezing and thawing whatsoever. That hard seed will likely lay there for an entire year, and the next spring it will germinate. So that's the situation with switchgrass as far as germination and the stratification process. Your other question was about cattle pasture, old cattle pasture being a deer habitat. To be honest, you really don't need to do anything. You just get those cattle out of there and let Mother Nature take over. And in no time, it's going to be prime bedding cover. You talked about possibly spraying the grasses that are there. I would not do that because I think one of the things that makes an old cattle pasture so attractive to deer are the grasses. They seem to like to bed in those areas that are kind of grassy. And what I've noticed is once the trees and the brush takes over and you totally lose those grassy areas, the deer don't seem to like it quite as well. The only thing I would do with that cattle pasture is possibly go in and enhance the native vegetation with species of trees that maybe are not found there. I have no idea what species are in the pasture that you purchased. But if you've just got things like, say, honey locust, hackberry, hickory, one way to tell an old cattle pasture, if you go into a woods and you see a lot of hickory trees, that's a good sign that was probably a cattle pasture at one time, because what happens is the cows will eat those young oaks. Those young oak seedlings are more palatable to a deer, where a hickory is really stemmy. Even a seedling, it's got a lot thicker stem, and it must not be as palatable either, because the cows will avoid eating those hickories, but they'll eat all the oaks. So if you see a timber that's primarily hickory, there's a very good chance that was once a cattle pasture. But to get back to answering your question, you can go in and enhance, by maybe planting some cedars or planting some oak species that hold their leaves, or some mass producing oak species. Now, I'm not typically a big fan of mixing the bedding and the food, but having some oaks within your bedding cover, I think, is a good thing, especially those oak species that hold their leaves throughout the winter. Shingle oak is a great one. Swamp white oak is a good one. Pin oak in certain situations, although I'm not a huge fan of pin oaks because they get the galls so bad. As do the shingle oaks, which I mentioned earlier, but the pin oaks seem to be really bad about that.
But that's not as much about food. That's about shade, right?
Exactly. And well, and also for screening,
Right.
you get a patch of that and the deer don't see you coming, and also for blocking the wind. And actually, one of them oak trees that holds its leaves is as good as a conifer. It's as good as a pine tree as far as cover goes. But if I was going to do anything to a cattle pasture, I would just enhance the woody vegetation. I would not, by any means, be out there killing the grass and trying to replace it with switchgrass.
So the buck that I just spoke about that is on a very small piece of property is a very small old cattle pasture, and nothing was done to it, and it is thick as what you can even try to walk through. But the thing that we have, here in Kentucky is a lot of cedars will take over the area when you let a cattle pasture go up, and it's okay. But once those cedars take over the property and you don't get the thorn bushes and the grasses come up underneath of it, that's when we go in and mulch it, or put a forestry head on something and take it out. I actually visited one of your consulting clients' farm this early Saturday morning. He wanted me to show, or he wanted to show me what all you had done since you've been out and done the a consulting plan for us. And his Miscanthus, first year Miscanthus, looks phenomenal. It's up chest high in some areas. He put a lot of work into the site prep and then keeping the weeds down. His beans look fantastic. I was mostly excited about how the old field that you told him to turn into a sanctuary had grown up on this hillside. I mean, and I kept talking about it. I was like, you're going to hold so many more deer because you increased your bedding amount. He's got plenty of food, but he's got a lot of bedding now. He's going to hold a lot of deer if he stays off that property.
I know the property you're talking about. It's a very unique property,
Yeah.
the way it lays out. But I think if he follows the plan, it'll be at least twice as good as it was before.
Yep. So very interesting conversation, though. Let's take a quick break. Matthews has sponsored the podcast and given up their spot, and we get so much feedback about our listeners who purchased raffle tickets or have helped Lester's Feet to hear about what we're doing with the money. This week was a huge week, Don. We mentioned last week that we were putting a new roof on a family's house. That has been done. The contractor should be there this coming week to take care of that family. But this week we purchased a communication device for an autistic nonverbal child so they can go to school for the first time. So it's like this special tablet that insurance wouldn't pay for. We bought a specialized wheelchair for a listener put us in touch with this family up in I believe Vermont, because they're not too far away from where you did one of your speaking engagements up in Vermont. We're doing a handicap ramp. We actually partnered with another nonprofit to do a handicap ramp for a child. And then the coolest part is our friend Austin Razor got to talk with a family who the father had gone in for, I think, an elective eye surgery. And I might get the real small details wrong, but some type of eye situation that he had, and he ended up going blind. Well, he was the primary breadwinner for the family, and so he's dealing with being on disability, and their daughter came down with leukemia this spring. So disability is just not helping them. They had a property that they were paying for on a land contract that they had done, just almost had it paid off. But in this situation, the board actually went in. The note was down so far, we got to just pay off the rest of the property for the family. In this situation, it wasn't where they're going to be right back in the same boat in 3 months. He's not going to be able to go back to work. So the amount that they owed on the property was very small, but instead of just helping them out with that house payment, we were able just to knock that out so they don't have to worry about it anymore. So thank you to Matthews for forfeiting your time on the podcast every week. We appreciate and value and actually model a lot about what we do with our companies from you. And we thank all the people who's donated to Lester's Feet to to help us do this ministry for people. It's quite special. I know Austin, I think, had teared up a little bit when he called the family and told them this week. So very cool stories that wouldn't be possible unless you all were helping donate this money.
Yeah, one of the most awesome things about this podcast is how it's brought the listener together with folks that need help. And we've just kind of been the vehicle to make things happen. And um, it's just been a true blessing for a lot of families, and the listener is the big reason for that. So thank you to everyone that helped.
I don't want people to think that we're paying off people's properties with the, we're not going in and spending all of it on one shot. So please don't take it that way. This family had worked their tail off to put themselves in a good financial position before he ended up going blind. And the note that they had was really small. So, but still, we went to knock it out. But that's only 3 or 4 examples. I think we got the check run this week has, I think, about 18 checks in it for this week of the families that we're helping. So my biggest fear, we talked about it after the raffle, is that we would not have an opportunity to basically, fund enough projects to be good stewards of everything that every dollar that's come in, because we don't take anything out of the foundation. But shame on me for not realizing God's going to open that door just as much as he did the people that donated. So we're getting in touch with a lot of people thanks to the listeners of this podcast.
Yep.
All right, so let's move to question number 3.
Okay, this one comes from Michael Riley from Hale, Michigan. He says, Don and Terry, thanks for the podcast and sharing your knowledge to the hunting community. I look forward to every week to catching up on the latest episode. I have a question about antler growth. This season on my farm, as many as 3 yearling bucks are missing a side of their rack or have racks that are completely lopsided, and a 1 to 2.5-year-old with the same issue. Could this be a genetic trait, or just is it possible that many deer had sustained some sort of injury last year early in the antler growth season? Have either of you, in your years of experience with wild herds or Don's captive herd, seen a missing side on multiple deer? Are these deer I should cull out? If so, thanks again for the podcast. I hope to get close to a seminar in the future or even attend a master course. Michael Riley. Well, Michael, most of the time when you see a buck with a messed up rack on one side, most of the time it is from an injury. I'd hate to put a percentage on it, but definitely well over 75% of the time it's from an injury. A lot of times when a buck sheds his antlers, he doesn't shed clean, and maybe a piece of the skull comes off with the antler. I know a lot of you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. You've seen a shed antler that might have a little piece of skull attached to it. That will cause a deformed antler the following year, and if the injury is severe enough and doesn't heal, it will cause deformed antler for the rest of that buck's life. With that said, I can recall at least once on my farm, probably, I don't know, 15 years or more ago, I had an issue with a couple of different bucks that on the same side, each buck had a spike antler. And I shot one of them. Those of you who have been to my master class have seen that skull from that buck hanging in my shed with the big spike on one side. I think that was genetic because there was two different bucks, a year apart in age, that had the very same thing on the very same side. I shot the one, the other one disappeared. I'm not sure what happened to him, but it can be genetic. I don't think I would get too worried about going out and trying to call every buck that has a lopsided or weird rack or an antler missing on one side. Um, I don't know what the bag limit is in Michigan, but here in Illinois, my home state, we can kill 2 bucks a year. And if all you did was go out and shoot bucks that had deformed antlers, you would never get to chase giants because you'd be filling your tag. So, and again, I think over 75% of the time it's an injury. It's not genetic. So I wouldn't worry about it too much.
You want my opinion or just move on?
Oh, I always want your opinion.
I've tried to overthink that kind of stuff way too much, and even if it is genetic, the good that you're going to do worrying about that is far less than you passing the 3.5-year-old 130-inch deer or 140-inch deer. So I've become very biased against the whole I'm culling out the half racks or I'm culling out the deformed bucks. And I'm not saying this listener's doing this, but I think the hunting community as a whole is just using it as an excuse to shoot something they normally wouldn't shoot. So I would encourage you not to overthink it. I've had several times on my farm where there's been a half rack or a buck, just like Don mentioned. I've even shot one of those in the past. There's a skull hanging over here on my wall, but the next year they didn't come back that way. I only noticed it for 1 year, so I don't think we'll ever have enough science to truly know and be definitive in it. So I think you focus on what you need to focus on, and that's setting your standards and shooting the right buck, and not copping out and saying, I'm shooting that buck because it's a cull buck. I think it's just culling has become an excuse, not a thought process anymore.
Well said.
So, all right. Well, this is the time of year probably you and I get our most use out of quiet cat bikes. We do use them when we're hunting a lot, but checking trail cameras and moving, we talked a lot about it last week. Next week, I'm going to be coming to Illinois and probably putting about 20 miles on that quiet cat bike next week. So I have it out of the building and charging in the garage right now. But have you put your new basket on the back of that back of yours yet?
I have not, but I'm going to be doing it soon because I've got a new property I'm going to be hunting where I'm going to use that bike every single time I hunt there. And the reason I'm using the bike is basically so people don't see my truck.
Yeah.
So,
So, well, I'm up there this weekend. I haven't even talked to you about this. If you're around, for those of you who have electric bikes, it doesn't even have to be a quiet cat, but they came out with this new basket that goes on the back rack of your bike. And I'm telling you, it is an absolute game changer for me when I'm doing trail cameras and carrying your backpack or other gear. And I found a way to basically eliminate that rear fender and use that basket. Super quiet, and I'll show you when I'm up there next week. So again, if you need help, the electric bike industry has gotten very saturated. There's all different kinds of brands out there. What Quiet Cat does better than anybody is they have inside sales and tech support people. We play the video every week on this podcast. If you need help deciding what goals you want out of an electric bike, they got people on the phone or through a web style meeting that they can walk you through what's the best choice for you. So if you need help with that, reach out to us. We'll put you in direct contact with our friends at Quiet Cat. But I'm telling you, I kind of made fun of you the first year you got an electric bike. And I think the reason you got that electric bike is because the deer were seeing the four-wheeler out in the middle of the field and you wanted to lay it down. And this thing has grown to being one of the best tools in our toolbox that we can use this time of year and through hunting season. So if you've been considering it, you need to check into it. But let us know and we'll put you in touch with our friends at Quiet Cat. So the next question of the day is from a neighbor down the road a little bit. So I know exactly who this is and where this farm is at. So I'm interested to get your spin on this, considering you don't hunt September 1st.
yeah. Well, this one comes from Robbie Kohler from Williamstown, Kentucky. He says, Dear Don and Terry, I have a question I'll try to keep short. Here in Kentucky, our season opens the first Saturday in September, and we are only a one buck state. Would you rather A, go after a good mature buck that you have on camera in summer pattern for a velvet deer and miss out on the rut action and the rest of the season, or B, wait until you think of the fall pattern bucks from previous years will show back up and hope they all made a good jump after bachelor groups have broken up? It's a tough decision to make because not everyone gets velvet bucks, but there is something special about a November frosty morning. Thanks, Robbie. Well, Robbie, I have no trouble answering your question. If I've got a giant buck, I'm going to hunt him every time the conditions are right from the opening day of season. And if he comes by my tree the first minute I'm in my stand for the whole season, he's getting shot that first minute. I can go to other states and I can enjoy the November rut. And where you're at, you're not that far from Ohio. I mean, shoot your velvet buck, shoot him whenever you get the opportunity. And then, you got the 1 buck limit, head up to Ohio and hunt there during the rut. But when those giants come by, you're not picky. You got to shoot them when you get the chance. And I don't care how good you are. Those opportunities don't come along very often. So when they do, you better take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think that you that's a part of you setting your goal, and wherever in the year you have a chance to meet that goal is where you focus your time on. And I can really appreciate how miserable it is hunting in 90+ degree weather. I mean, it's flat out miserable. Even if you're only out there for an hour before dark, and the first couple weeks of September, it's hot, it's miserable. But saying that doesn't mean if you have a deer that you're interested in that's yearly pattern shows up, in late October, I'm not going to shoot a substandard buck the first weekend of September if I have the intel on that. So I think you set your goal what it is, and you hunt specific to that goal, and whenever it is, it is. I'm glad that Kentucky is a 1 buck state. I think it helps our upside a lot, but I can tell you got to get it done most of the time before rifle season. It's tough. It's tough afterwards.
And Robbie mentioned velvet bucks. I've never been that wrapped up in killing a velvet buck. I mean, it'd be nice, but it's not a goal of mine. If it happens, it happens. But it's probably not going to happen because I don't go trying to make it happen. So it's not going to happen in my home state of Illinois. Although I did let somebody shoot a velvet buck on my farm once, a buck that always shed his velvet really late in October. And he got to be 4 years old, and I just seen that he was never going to mount to much. I had my chance to shoot a velvet buck right here on my own farm, and I let somebody else do it instead. So velvet doesn't mean much to me.
Like I said, I'm sure he said thank you. But the big thing about it is I've never shot a velvet buck, and I've hunted every year the first week of September, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to shoot one because he's in velvet, or I'm only going to shoot a buck that I don't necessarily want to target because he is in velvet. It doesn't, if I have a target buck, I'm going to try to shoot him no matter what the conditions are from opening day until the end. So I hope that answers your question, Robbie. I hope you have a giant Kentucky buck that you're going to be able to get this year, whether it's opening weekend or later. If you kill him, call me. I'll come and we'll get a picture of you for him for the podcast. So I hope you kill a giant this year.
Well, hey, everyone, this is Terry Peer with the Chasing Giants podcast. We're with Don Bailey of Buy a Farm. And, Don, it's been a couple weeks since we've had somebody on, but we're going to take a little bit of a break today and talk about 2 different properties that are upcoming on auction. So I want you to tee off the first one for us.
The first one is 40 acres. It's a square 40. It has a homestead on it. There's 29 acres of it tillable, 27.9 of tillable land, which is enrolled in CRP. The contract expires September the 30th, 2023. Has an annual payment of $3,126. It has a nice 3-bedroom, 2-bath brick home that the original owners built. Said the original owner, so it's got some dated carpet and so on and so forth in it, but it has central air, central heat, just a very, very well-kept home. Also has a pole barn. It'd be set up for livestock or hunting. The maps, to me, show it itself that it's an amazing hunting track if a person wanted it for hunting.
Yeah, I want to talk just a little bit about the property itself, because I think we need to do some justice to this as it relates to everything that Don and I preach about, what happens around you. But first, this property is in Clay County, Illinois, so I believe this is like around Louisville, Illinois. Is that correct?
Yes, yep, just north of Louisville, Illinois. Yep.
See, that's the difference. You all from Illinois, you call us Louisville. Us people from Kentucky call it Louisville.
Yep, spelled exactly the same.
Well, when we look when I'm looking at the aerial, I have this up on my computer, and I'm going to edit in some pictures of this for the people watching on YouTube right now. This property has a huge ravine that, as long as the aerial map is oriented correctly on the Biofarm site, it goes from the top right-hand corner to the northeast to the southwest. And you said this is a really big ravine, but what I like about it is that finger of woods that cuts through almost the middle of this property connects big chunks of woods on the properties to the northeast and the southwest. And my goodness, with some management programs, you could draw some deer through that property. It would be an awesome spot.
Yes, and there's a large tract of woods that it connects to, but there's also, at least on three sides, there's some tillable property, corn and soybean rotation.
Right.
And yes, food plots in there. The people that own it have never hunted it. They're not hunters. They never have been. The kids that have it now aren't hunters. They don't hunt it. When I went to look at it, Terry, for the first time, I took my four-wheeler around the outside edges of the whole property. I did not see a single four-wheeler track. Absolutely none.
Yep.
Tons and tons and tons of bedding. The grass is waist to chest high.
Right.
Tons and tons of bedding areas. But that's one thing I like about the property. I did not see one four-wheeler track out there anywhere.
So, like we said, this has kind of a little bit of everything. It could be a connector, with the neighbors, be able to hold deer, be able to draw deer. Deer are going to use this property and the ravine that runs through it. And you even had a good idea that with not too much work, that ravine could even be built into a pond in the middle of the property if you wanted.
Yes, and a large pond, or even classified as a lake, because it runs real deep, and then of course swallows out as it shallows out as it gets to the other side. But it's a large ravine. It would make a beautiful large pond or lake.
Great homestead property, great hunting property. The CRP contract you said is expiring next year, so this is a good property to go online and search. Clay County, Illinois, 40 acres, and check out these aerials. I think you're gonna like what you see there with how that wooded draw feeds from one side to the other. And then obviously there's some other ways of getting income off of the property too. It's got a house, so it might even be one of those hunting properties for our Amish friends that are looking for a place to get out of town to go hunt, what have you. So now you said that this property is on auction. Tell us a little bit about the dates of the auction, of the open and close, and how to learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, bidding starts a week before the close. Bidding opens August the 11th.
Okay.
And then it closes August 18th at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Okay. So we've talked about the online auction before. If you have more questions about that, we can reach out to Don directly on how to bid online or by phone. But real easy process. You guys have made it pretty seamless, where even guys like me can even handle online bidding if we wanted to. So, you got anything else you want to talk about for this specific 40 acres? Or I think this would be a cool property.
Nothing other than some people may not know where Louisville/Louisville is exactly, but Effingham, Illinois, where the interstates cross, it's basically just 30 miles straight south of Effingham, Illinois. So it kind of gives you a better mindset of where it might be.
Yeah, so that's not too far away from where Don lives, and I hunt just a little bit south of there. We're probably about 30 minutes north of Effingham. So for people coming out of like Indianapolis, you're probably, an hour and a half from Indianapolis, just west of Terre Haute, smack dab pretty much in the middle of the state.
Yep, pretty much. Yes.
All right. Well, good deal. So, again, Clay County, Illinois, 40 acres. Go check that one out. And you have another one that's actually going to be up on auction, but this one's down by the river.
Yes, Mississippi River. The town of Prairie du Rocher is the closest town. It's south of St. Louis, Illinois, on the Mississippi.
This would be Randolph County.
Randolph County.
Okay.
It's 207 acres, but it's going to be broke up. Basically, the tillable is going to sell in one tract, be offered in one tract, and then there's another tract, 69 acres, that has only 20 acres tillable.
Okay.
The tract 1 is inside the levee. Tract 2 is outside the levee.
Right.
So it is susceptible to flooding. It's got an amazingly good bean crop on it, the 69 acres. It'd be just a fantastic hunting piece. And another nice thing about it, if part of it does flood, you'll always have access to get to it on top of the levee. It'll have a right of way, to have access to it. So it's not like it's a piece that's going to be partially flooded and you can't get to it.
Yeah. So I'll put pictures up for the people watching on YouTube, but the people listening, just imagine this block coming out from the river. There's a section of woods along the river and kind of on the north side of it, and then the south side of it. And then so it makes kind of a J along the river with woods, and then the levee runs along the river and turns up and goes up the right side of the property, and the levee looks fantastic. I've hunted a lot of river bottoms before, and I've never had a levee this nice where it had a road on the top. So great levee that would give you access in and out. But the other thing that would be really cool about having the levee all along these woods, if you only had track 2, is you'd have a way to get in and out with no intrusion whatsoever, because you could use the other side of that levee. Fantastic access to get down to river bottoms, and Don and I talk a lot about river bottoms and how the deer work up and down it. So even track 2, that's how many acres did you say track 2 was?
Track 2 is 138. Or no, track 2 is 69. I'm sorry,
okay.
The smaller track.
Yeah, the smaller track, and that can be tilled. It's just you might lose it in the water coming up out of the river. So you said it had beans in it right now. I mean, I'm looking at aerials of it. It looks fantastic for being able to put in food plots.
I think there's some pictures on there of the bean crop, or I was aiming to put some on there. The bean crop is just amazing on it.
Yeah.
But that road system, that's kind of unprecedented, and that goes on for miles.
Right.
To run along that river and be able to observe what's going on.
So the interesting thing about this little small track 2 property, it has tillable in the middle of it, but there's these 2 fingers of woods that come down by the levee. So I don't know the size of those trees, but just looking at the aerial and seeing where the trees are around what could be a food plot, you could actually have a tree stand location for all 4 wind directions, which is really uncommon actually for small tracts of property like this. So I think the people that might be looking for a smaller tract of land just to hunt on, or maybe even both tracts together where they could do some tillable to get income off of it to help pay for it, this might be your opportunity on this one.
Well, that's the property address is Matthews and Levee Road at Prairie du Rocher. If it's also on our website. You can go to the Google map at the bottom, and it'll pinpoint right to it, and you can zoom in and zoom out to get your directions.
Yep. So yeah, again, this one is also an auction. Does it have the same dates as the other one?
Yes, it does. Bidding opens August the 11th and closes August the 18th at 8 p.m.
So, Don, I'm just curious. I don't want to bog everybody down that's listening to this, but when they have two tracks like this on auction, is it where you have preference if you buy one, or can you bid on both of them together? Do you have to bid on both of them separately? How does that work?
You can do it different ways, but this will be offered in combination.
Okay.
You can buy track one, you can buy track two, or you can buy both tracks, 1 and 2.
Okay.
And it seems a little confusing, but it's rather simple. Whichever way brings the seller the most money. If a combination is more than 1 and 2 separate, that's the way it's going to sell. But you will have the opportunity, like if you bid on track 2 and someone bids a combination and kicks you out, well, you have the ability to raise your bid on track 2.
Just on track
and
2. Yep.
Yeah, the system that we have now, we're really proud of, because it automatically tells you what you have to bid. They say you were high bidder on track 2, somebody bid on 1 and 2, and you lost your bid. Well, the computer system online will tell you exactly what you have to bid on track 2 to pull it back out of the combination, and you be the lead.
Right.
And that's really helpful.
Yep. Well, I pay attention to the BioFarm Facebook page and get on your website often. One thing that I know is that your listings are starting to come back up with some new properties. So even if these two are not something that you might be interested in, please visit the BioFarm website or give Don a call and tell him what you're looking for. You are getting some access to some new properties right now, which is a good thing. So before we sign off here, why don't you remind everybody how to get a hold of you if they have any questions?
Yes, Don Bailey. My direct line is 618-919-1031, or simply D Bailey, that's BAILEY, @biofarm.com.
Well, good catching up with you, buddy. We'll look forward to having another spot on next week, and good luck on these 2 auctions and all your other listings.
Thank you, sir. Have a good evening.
Okay, take care.
Question number 5.
This one comes from Travis Asen. I hope I said your last name right, Travis. He's from, man, I might have trouble with the town he's from too, Okonomowoc.
Better you than me.
Okonomowoc, Wisconsin. Hello, Don and Terry. Writing to you from Wisconsin. Let me start by saying I'm a huge fan of the podcast. What you gentlemen bring to the industry through honesty and integrity is refreshing. Yes, your rants can go on, but I rarely fast forward because most of the time I can relate and enjoy how passionate you guys get on these subjects. My question is on your real-world Miscanthus. I'm testing this on my property in north central Wisconsin near Minocqua and Rhinelander for the first time this year. I planted the 100 rhizomes mid-May because the ground was still frozen until that point. Many have said to me, you've wasted your money not going to work. It's too cold in that location. Currently, the Miscanthus is probably around 4 feet tall and continues to grow like a weed. I'm only applying liquid Miracle-Gro fertilizer. pH is 6.5 to 7.0. Sorry for this being long-winded, but I'm setting the table so you know exactly the condition they are planted in. What do you suggest to your clients in the northern regions to get better wintering success? Example, do you suggest any straw over the top of these to better insulate, or anything else I could do to help them through that first winter? I would think that once they are established and healthy, wintering will be easier on them. Thanks again, and go Brandon. Travis from northern Wisconsin. Well, Travis, when Terry and Wes and I visited different university test plots of various Miscanthus varieties, one of the things we was really looking at was winter hardiness. Are these plants going to survive in a more northerly region than where we live in the Midwest? And so the variety that we selected, not only does it have more leaf material in the plant, compared to stalk for better screening, but it also is the variety that we were told by the Miscanthus experts that does the best in northern regions. The variety of Miscanthus that Real World sells actually has been grown in southern Canada. I don't think you're going to have an issue in northern Wisconsin. Um, One thing that we did learn through our growers is that the really critical time for that Miscanthus planting will be the first winter after you plant it. That's when it's not fully established. You know, the roots aren't as vast and as deep as they will be on that plant in future years. So what we were told is when a planting experiences winter kill, it's almost always that first winter after planting. Now you bring up an excellent point. Well, let me back up. The other thing that happens is it happens during a winter when there's no snow cover to insulate the ground. You know, so you get sub-zero temperatures with no snow cover as insulation, and that frozen ground, that's when you lose the Miscanthus. You bring up an excellent point about putting straw down. If your planting is not so big that you can put straw down, that is a fantastic idea, especially that first year after planting. I think you're going to prove your friends wrong that we're saying you're wasting your time, that it won't do well there. If it's in a location, the planting site is good. I don't think your region of the country is going to prevent you from having a good stand of Miscanthus. It's again, it's getting it through that first winter and putting some straw down for insulation. You should be fine.
Yeah, it's that first winter. And again, where the problem is when we have bitter cold temperatures for long periods of time and no snow cover. That's kind of the worst case scenario for everything. But you know, if your plot looks like, you know, my buddies that I went to visit this week and it's already chest high, it's not real easy to go roll a round bale straw out down that line, you know, to protect it. So, you know, thatching it or putting cover over it's a little bit tougher, but it'll help whether that's enough or not. I mean, again, Mother Nature is the make or break of this. And if you're up north and you have, you know, a month of bitter cold weather and no snow, I know a lot of places in Minnesota didn't have a lot of snow last year. I don't think Montana had a lot of snow because they were really dry the following spring because they didn't have that melt off. You're gonna struggle with some things when it comes to that. So
Well, like anything we plant, you know, we're kind of at the mercy of Mother Nature. When the conditions are great, well, the crop is great. When conditions are challenging, well, the results are not going to be near as good.
well, this next thing I'm gonna say about Miscanthus at the end of it. If I left it in the podcast, I was right. If I'm not, Don will tell me I'm wrong and I'll have to take it out. But the other thing, the secret, one of the little tidbit secrets about Miscanthus is they love nitrogen. So anything that you can do with liquid nitrogen, whether it's hog manure pumped in on it or whatever, this stuff thrives on high nitrogen content. So I know you said you were using Miracle Grow, but if you can find something that's even heavier in nitrogen, pump it to it. One of the commercial uses for products like this is to put around hog barns down in the floodplains where there's hurricanes along the coast, so down in the Carolinas. And the reason for that is if they get 3 feet of rain and it floods out that liquid manure tank and goes out, this plant will actually absorb all of that back out before it goes down into the watershed. So and it loves nitrogen. So if you can find ways to get liquid nitrogen on these plots, you'll have a big kickstart on this stuff.
You make a great point, Terry. And one thing, two notes from what you just said. First of all, it does not have to be liquid nitrogen, although liquid is the form where it will most readily utilize it. But
Mm-hmm.
you can use granular urea, and as long as you get a good rain to dissolve that granular urea and it gets into the soil, you'll be fine. The other thing is I caution you about using urea the first year when you plant. I would wait until the second year. that nitrogen really wants to promote top growth of that plant. And before the plant goes crazy with top growth, it needs to get some roots established first. So the first year, lay off the nitrogen, but second year and beyond, you pour the nitrogen to it and you're going to see the difference.
Yep. So just a little tidbit about how some of the lessons we learned from the commercial side of products like this. So, all right. Well, that's the last question for the day. What before we feature this buck on the wall behind you, what's the plans for this week?
Oh, this week basically got some trail cameras to check. I'm trying to finish up. I built that new house a year ago, and this year we built a garage. We had some brick and stone left, and I decided to build it's more like a garden shed than a garage, but a place to keep our lawnmower and four-wheeler side by side and that. They're about to finish that up, and I'm just trying to get this house done so I can go hunting this fall. My honey-do list is long, but it's shrinking, and I'm working every day to scratch a couple things off of that list so that when we get into September, I'm totally done and I'm 100% focused on whitetails. So I got some honeydew projects to do. We got a meeting or two at Real World this week. Just crazy how that company has been blessed, and other companies are reaching out to us and wanting to work with us on various things. So I'll be up at the office at least one day, if not two, this week. Just I may even, I haven't even went one time glassing for bucks this summer because I've just been so darn busy that I haven't been able to go one evening to look glass for bucks. And this might be the week that I finally get to go.
Well, maybe you'll finally be in your truck driving around with your Vortex binos or spotting scope and see what's walking around in these big bachelor group areas. Because I know of two places that you need to do a drive-by on, because you probably haven't even, if you haven't done it yet, you don't know what's even out there.
Well, I've checked a lot of cameras in the last 2 days, and there's some areas that I'm totally disappointed. It's like I've got these bachelor groups. I film or I get pictures of the same bachelor groups every summer. Put my cameras on the same trees. They're always there, and there's always a good one or two. It seems like there's always multiple bucks between 150 and say 180. And this year I've got at least two, maybe three different bachelor groups that I watch every year, and there's not a decent buck in any of them. I'm talking not anything over 130.
Huh.
And I've never seen it before. And we're going to do, we get a little bit farther along, probably maybe September, another month, where I've had a chance to really get a handle on what's out there. We're going to do a buck forecast like we've done in the past. And, but I've got other places. Like I just checked a couple cameras on a property yesterday, and there was two bucks that I knew about. The bucks, they were there last year, and both of them bucks put on significant growth. And I'm telling you, one of them he's got giant brow tines. One brow tine's probably 2 inches longer than the other one, and I guarantee you both brows are at least 12 inches long, and that long one may be 14 inches long.
Wow.
He reminds me a lot of the buck Kyle Harmon shot.
Uno.
Yeah, but this buck, I guarantee you, he's got every bit the brows Uno's got, and maybe even bigger.
Wow.
Never seen a buck with brows like that. Found a drop tine buck. I've only seen two drop tine bucks in my entire life, and I found one this summer. So may get to lay eyes on him, and if I do, I'm shooting him because he's probably over 180. So
well, the one thing that since we've started this podcast, we've had the highs and we've had the lows, where we've said we got a good one that we're going after, and then we've had the years where we've said we might not even shoot a buck this year. But this year we are all very optimistic at some of the choices that we have with deer that we can go after and chase. So it's going to be an exciting year. And we're not going to tee it up and tease it, but there's also some very big announcements that we have to make as it relates to this podcast and Higgins Outdoors in the very near future that we're very excited about.
Yeah, within the next month, there's a couple of different things we're going to be talking about. Some big changes coming along. So just stay with us and you'll hear the details.
Yep. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about this buck behind you. From the angle that he's at, I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the left, and I don't know how many on the right. So you're gonna have to describe this frame for the people listening, and talk a little bit about him.
Well, he's got 12 total points, Terry. He's a 5x7. I shot him back in the mid 90s. And when I shot him, he was the biggest buck I'd shot at that point. He scored 169 and some change. Ironically, I had a friend, he just missed 170 by less than a half an inch. And I had a friend tell me I would have found another half inch somewhere. I just couldn't bring myself to stretch the tape. If I tell you it scores 169, he scores 169, not 168. But anyway, it was a situation. And for those that follow me on social media, I posted a picture of that buck one day this week, and I did after I didn't even realize, that was the next buck on the wall that we was going to feature. I probably wouldn't have posted that when I did, but anyway, um, there was a property I was hunting at that time in the mid 90s that I killed 3 really good bucks out of the same tree. And it was a situation where there was a small thicket at the end of a cornfield. This thicket was rectangle in shape. It was probably 50 yards wide by about, I'm going to say 150 yards long. And I mean, not very big at all. It probably wasn't 2 acres. Less than 2 acres. Probably, it might not even been an acre, but it was really, really thick. I mean, it was just briars so thick. I mean, there was places you literally could not walk through it. It would have been a struggle to get through it. But anyway, out of the corner of this rectangle thicket was a tree line that headed out. The tree line came out of the northeast corner of the thicket and it headed straight to the north. That tree line separated 2 different ag fields, and the rotation was such that each year there would be a different crop on each side. So there was corn and soybeans. They would just flip flop from year to year to which side they were growing on. But the bucks would come out of this thicket right in the corner where that tree line met, and then they would follow that tree line out into the ag fields to feed in the evenings. The access to it was absolutely fantastic because I would come in from the east. And again, that tree line was coming out of the northeast corner of that thicket. So I would come in from the east with a westerly wind. And I could hunt southwest, straight west, or northwest. It didn't matter as long as it was westerly. And it would blow that scent. The ideal situation was a northwest wind, because the wind would be right in my face as I walked to my stand. I would climb in it, and as those bucks would come out of that corner of the thicket into the ag field, that northwest wind would be quartering right into their face. So they'd be coming from south to north with the northwest wind right there quartering into their face. And this was he wasn't the first buck I shot there. He was actually, I'm looking here on my wall. I know which one was the first. He would have been the 3rd buck I shot there, actually. The first ones were, well, one of them's a 10 pointer that scores 150 inches. And then I've got a really heavy but tight rack buck. We actually featured, he was the first buck we featured on this series, shot from this same tree. He officially scored like 146. Really heavy, but really tight and short tines. But anyway, the crazy thing about this situation was that these bucks, I shot 2 of them on October 15th and 1 of them on October 22nd, right there in the mid-October lull, they like to say. When the rut started heating up towards the end of October, these bucks left, and they would just go some, other parts of their range. And they didn't seem to be there the first week of season. I never had any luck early, but right there in mid-October, and I'm sure it was the hunting pressure on surrounding properties, when season opened, it pushed them bucks out of some more traditional cover and into this little thicket, and that's where they would stay until the rut heated up. And then when the rut heated up, boom, they was gone. But there was about a 2 week period in mid-October where this stand was just smoking hot. And on the evening that I shot this particular buck, there was 4 bucks in all that came out. There was 2 1/2-year-old bucks, and then there was 2 big bucks. This one and a giant 9-pointer. And when I seen them come out, I just decided that the first one of them big bucks that gave me a shot, I was shooting. I would have gladly shot that 9-pointer. But this is the buck that gave me the first shot. I shot him, and he made a death run down the tree line, and pretty easy recovery. I waited until the next morning. This is something that I learned very early as a bow hunter. When you shoot a buck in the evening, don't be in a hurry to go get him. Let him die. And most of the time, unless I see a buck fall on an afternoon hunt, I let him lay till morning. And that's what I did. And I came back the next morning, and boom, there he was, right down that tree line, the direction he ran. But that's kind of the story of that buck.
That's neat. What year was that, you said?
It was the mid 90s. I don't remember the exact, 95, 96, somewhere in there.
I got you.
What was you, 5, 6 years old then, Terry?
No, man, I graduated high school in 95. I was an old feller by then.
Yeah, I'd been out for a while at that point. I'd been out 14 years.
Well, 2 quick things before we sign off. Number one, hats are back in stock with a limited supply. You made a Facebook post about that. So if you're looking for a Chasing Giants hat, our friend Stephanie Bryson does a great job. But again, the supply chain issues are supply chain issues. So if you want one of these hats, make sure you get them and get them ordered, because there's not a whole lot of them, but we got what we could. The second thing is, I'm kind of disappointed you're out of the goat business.
Oh, you had to bring that up, didn't you? I'll tell you what, if I never see another goat or sheep on this farm, that'll be fine with me. Yeah.
I haven't even talked to you about this. I don't know what's going on.
You've seen my post, didn't you?
Just got sick of goats, huh?
Yeah, you got everybody wondering what's going on with the goats. Well, so I've always liked livestock and had cattle, and I came across something here a year or so ago about how goats make good companion animals with your cow herd because they eat different plant species. The cows want to graze on the grasses, and these goats will eat the weeds and such that are growing up in your cattle pasture. And I thought, well, that sounds like a great idea. So I went out and I bought 15 Boer nanny goats and a billy. And I'll tell you what, those things were the biggest pain in the butt I think I've ever had. If they weren't getting out and I'm having to chase them down, or they're in the yard, eating robin's flowers or something, then one of them's got his head stuck in the fence. And I'm telling you, like every 2 or 3 days, there was a goat with its stinking head stuck in the fence and couldn't get it out. So the reason Terry knows all this is I posted a hay feeder. I bought a brand new hay feeder last summer or last winter, specifically for feeding goats and sheep. And I posted it on Facebook for sale, and I said the goats and sheep are gone and never coming back or something like that. So I know a lot of people got a big kick out of that post.
Now your yard is a whole lot quieter now, I'm assuming also.
Oh yeah.
Man, those things are loud.
Yeah, they're just, if I never see another one, I'll be fine. I'll stick to the cows.
All right. Well, we'll talk after we get off, but I'm heading your way this week. I got to fly down to Charlotte in the morning and have meetings with Team Penske for Monday and Tuesday. Then I'll be back in the office, and then hopefully the end of the week, be coming up to Illinois, working up there for a couple days. Patrick and I need to get some work done on our hunting properties. We're behind about 2 months. That's how busy it's been, but it is what it is. So we got some catch-up work to do. So.
Sounds like a busy week. Look forward to seeing you.
All right. Well, we'll sign us off and tune in next week for 131.
Thanks for listening, everybody. God bless. Have a great week.
Chasing Giants has been brought to you by Osseo Camo, Buy Farm Real Estate Company, 360 Hunting Blinds, Victory Chevrolet, Real World Wildlife Products, Matthews Archery, Novix Tree Stands, Gingerich Tree Farm, WildlifeFarming.com, Quiet Cat, and Vortex Optics. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode of Chasing Giants.